Maybe it's just me, but I think it's easier to make financial mistakes in your 20s rather than it is to talk about those financial mistakes in your 30s. But unfortunately for me, that's exactly what we're gonna do in this video. I'm gonna give you guys 4 financial mistakes or bad ways to think in regards to finances that I made in my early 20s. And despite the fact of how embarrassing this might be for me, I hope this video helps you guys out. Whether you're in a position where you're doing the exact same things I did and you don't realize it, you can stop early, or you're approaching a situation and this video can hopefully help you do the right thing as opposed to what I did. So let's get started. I'm so excited. My first mistake in my 20s, treating my credit card as an asset. So I got my first credit card when I was 19 years old. The whole purpose for me to get it was so that I can build my own credit and qualify for my own car note for the very first time. So I had responsible reasons for it. In the beginning, I didn't really use it that often, but I was fairly responsible with it. So responsible that within the first maybe year and a half, I got a credit limit increase. I went from about $1,500, which was my starting when I first got it, to about $7,200. So I was feeling like big time. And unfortunately, that's kind of where my thought process with credit cards changed, just for a little bit, just for a small period of time. One night I went to a bar with a couple of friends of mine to go watch a UFC match. And one of my friends went with me to a bar to get some snacks and some more to drink. He was just walking to the bar with me to see what else they had. And he wasn't gonna buy anything at the time just because he hadn't gotten paid yet. And I was thinking, cool, I'll go ahead and buy you a drink. It's no big deal. Now the issue isn't the fact that I use my money to buy somebody else drinks, because I've been friends with him and the other guy for the majority of my life. I think they're the longest friendships I had. The issue is what I said in response to what he told me. Don't worry, I basically have $7,200 in my bank account. That, ladies and gentlemen, was a moment where I treated my credit card as an asset. One thing you gotta keep in mind is being responsible with your credit cards. It's a very cool thing to have to help you build credit. A lot of those have rewards on it as well, so you can make some cash back, get gifts, stuff like that. But one thing you have to keep in mind, and maybe some people forget because I did it that one period of time, is that a bank is giving you that money, so they anticipate that you give it back to at some point, normally with interest unless you can avoid that. So make sure you use your credit cards responsibly. And luckily for me, that wasn't something I did a lot. But if I didn't have that thought process at those periods of time, that probably could have helped me out in the future or at this point in time. But just like I'm doing now, make sure you're using it only in emergencies or when you can afford to make a purchase. That might have been my most embarrassing story, but the second mistake is probably gonna be a little obvious, and that's not investing sooner. Again, that's probably a really generic thing you hear from older people or your friends. Hey, you should start investing now. Why haven't you started investing yet? But it's the truth. Take the S&P 500, which is used a lot to show where the country is in regards to investing, if we're under a recession, if we're doing really well. According to websites like Investopedia.com, from when the S&P 500 was first established back in, I think, 1957, up until December of 2021, its average annual increase is about 11%. So that means despite those major points in time, from the 2008 mortgage recession to even our situation with the pandemic that started in 2020, we're always averaging upward. So that means if you're a lot younger and you invest your money in your 20s, maybe you're 20 years old, then by the time you're 29 or 30 years old, more than likely you're gonna get maybe double of what you put in. And that's not considering if you're putting your money into dividend paying stocks or anything like that. Now I'm happy that I'm in a position where I can't tell myself, hey, I wish I would have started investing yesterday, because I've been investing for almost 4 years. But I can't help but think about the periods of time where I could have invested my money instead of doing other things with it. For example, when I was in college, there was one semester I remember where I actually got a grant, and I actually got more than enough money to pay for that semester, and I had maybe $1,000 left over. Now, I don't remember what I did with it, but of course, I definitely didn't invest with it. But had I invested that $1,000 into, let's say, something like VTI, at that time, around 2014, VTI was about $99 per share. So that would have gotten me at least 10 shares. And at this point now, 2022, VTI is about $200 per share. So had I pulled that money out today, I would have made at least $1,000. That's not to mention the fact that VTI is a dividend paying ETF, which I think pays between 60 to 80 cents per share per quarter. So that could have made me at least $24 to $32 per year. And that's also not considering the fact that I could have reinvested that money back into that portfolio and made even more more over time. But instead I did other stuff with it that I can't even remember. The point is, every moment that you don't put your money into the stock market, you are losing the opportunity to make more money over a long period of time. And when you're younger, you have more of an opportunity to make more money and take more risk and do stuff like that. So if you are in your early 20s, or even right now, if you haven't invested yet, definitely make sure you invest and you don't have to look back in the past and wish you did it sooner. Third mistake I made, buying a BMW. Now, this isn't a flex in no way, shape, or form. Now, if you asked me back when I was, in my early 20s, I would say, oh, of course it is. It was definitely one of the best purchases I ever made for like the first 6 months. So if you've been watching a few of the videos on my channel, you would have heard me say a few times that I used to work at a bank, which I did for about 6 years. And at one point in time, I got a promotion, which was great, got more money, which is always great. And around that time, I needed a new vehicle. I had a vehicle that I purchased from my mom, but it was starting to get a little bit old. And I was able to build enough credit with that credit card that I mentioned on mistake number 1 to actually get my own car note and purchase a new car. So I bought a 2008 BMW 328i. One of the coolest cars I ever had, which it was only the second car I ever had, and for the first 6 months, it was amazing. But there are a few things that I wish I had in mind prior to actually purchasing it. It all surrounds the idea of buying things that are reliable to you, whether it's a house or any other major thing, but in my case, a car. Something that was reliable for me was something that could get me from point A to point B, and that wasn't going to cost a lot of money on the back end. At that point in time, I was a college student commuting between 30 to 50 miles a day, 3 to 5 days a week, depending on what semester it was. And with the BMW, I didn't realize I was going to need the highest level of gas, the super premium, supreme, or depending on where you go. So it was already going to cost me a lot of money just to get from point A to point B. What I also didn't realize is that German engineering is a little bit annoying if you can't afford it. It's only annoying because actually doing the repair is really expensive, so labor is really expensive, so there's a lot of extra money I had to spend out the gate. On top of that, the car was older, and the next 5.5 years I had with that vehicle was fairly painful. And there were other cars I could have gotten, a Honda Civic, an Accord, maybe a Nissan Altima, even a Hyundai Elantra or something like that. Something that is still fairly nice, but may have been a little bit more reliable and had the primary goal of getting me from point A to point B. If this lesson teaches you anything, it's just whenever you're purchasing something, make sure it's reliable for you in whatever way, shape, or form that is. The final mistake that I made in my 20s is probably as generic as number 2, but just as important, and that's not handling a savings account as best as I could. For me, not handling a savings account as best as I could relies on 2 things. 1, not saving as frequently as I should have, and 2, not paying attention to where my money was going. Throughout the bulk of my 20s, I was in college, and throughout my college career, being a full-time student, I was normally also a full-time or almost full-time employee. I wasn't making the most money, but more than likely, I could have contributed $50 a month into a savings account. And I'll be really transparent with you guys. I started school in August of 2011 and I graduated in December of 2018. So it did take me a little over 7 years to get my degree, but I got my degree. The only point I'm mentioning that is because I didn't start making a lot of money until I graduated. But at that time where I could have saved $50 a month, had I did that for 6.5 years, because there were 6 months where I was actually unemployed, I could have saved I think over $800, and that's not mentioning where my money was going, which was another thing I didn't think about. One thing I didn't realize, despite the fact that I worked for a bank for 6 years, is that when you put your money into your savings account, it's not physically somewhere where your name's on the front cover. They use that money to invest into other things to try to make more profit as a bank. But with that, depending on the type of account they offer, they'll promise you that, hey, we will give you a certain amount of money periodically. And that money is typically paid to you monthly, and it's called a dividend. The savings account I had a dividend, but there were other savings accounts that paid even more with maybe less qualifications or at least the same. Companies like Ally Bank are known for having savings accounts that offer a lot more in dividends. So that's a lot more that you could be making just having your money sit there. And with that compound interest, as I was saving $50 a month, my balance was growing generically, but then I'm also getting more dividends every single month that's being reinvested back into the savings account. So I could have ended up with a lot more than $800 and some change over the course of time in my college career. So whenever you are saving, first off, hopefully you're saving money as much as you can, but make sure you're paying attention to where your money is actually going. Hopefully it's something that has dividends, so your money is making you more money. Now I'm happy to say that I'm at a point in my life where I think I'm doing a lot better. There's always a lot of growth that anybody, including and especially myself, can make when it comes to finances. And of course, from time to time, I think about how I handled money in the past, hence this video. but you definitely want to make sure that when you're thinking about just anything in the past, hopefully you're using that more to better yourself in the present and in the future, because you learn from your mistakes rather than be upset because you can't change the past, because none of us can right now. I actually have a video about that where I use budgeting to help me with my mental health, which ultimately helps me with my financial health. So hopefully you enjoyed that video, and hopefully you enjoyed this one. Leave comments below on what you guys think about these mistakes. Maybe leave some mistakes that you guys have made. I appreciate you guys watching as always, and until next time, take care.